Alright guys, in today's video we're going to be talking about Death Stranding. Now it has been quite some time since we've actually talked about this game, but there was some very interesting information, however we don't know how true this information is, that has popped up. It is a rumor, but again, it's a very interesting one, and it's one that I want to take time to discuss here because I honestly do think that there's at least some truth to this information that's coming out, and so you do have to take it with a grain of salt. But basically what this rumor is talking about, well, there's good and there's bad. The bad is that apparently Death Stranding really didn't sell very well at all, to the point where Sony is pretty disappointed in its overall performance. However, the good news is that it's motivating Sony to really try to get this deal going with Konami and even Kojima Productions to work on another Silent Hill game. Now, I'm sure as most of you know, this is something that's been going around for a little while now, and as I always say, where there is smoke, there's usually fire. Not always true, though. There's a lot of rumors and a lot of leaks that turn out to not be true. But there's enough backing this one up that I feel as though it's worth continuing to talk about here on the channel. So before we go any further, if you could do me a favor, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps the videos out a lot. And make sure you hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss any future content. But this comes from Game Rant, where they are sourcing the individual known as Dusk Golem from Reset Era. However, this, I believe, is the same individual on Twitter who is known as Aesthetic Gamer. We've talked about this individual multiple times on the channel, and while they have yet to be proven correct about what they're talking about, this is the same individual who basically came out here and said that they've been hearing that Sony is trying to strike up a deal with Konami, and they're trying to make some kind of horror game, and they're trying to get some big names involved, one of those names being Kojima. So the first thing that they ended up revealing is that apparently Sony was really disappointed in the sales of Death Stranding, that pretty much it came to an abrupt halt after its initial launch window and didn't really reach many of the milestones that Sony was hoping for. And it goes on to say that there are in fact still more than 3 million copies sitting in warehouses. So that's extremely interesting in it of itself, and to be honest, the reason why I do believe this is true, unfortunately, for those who were big fans of Death Stranding, is I came across a tweet. It's a little bit old now, but it comes from Benji Sales on Twitter. He's pretty well known in the gaming community. He's able to usually share or reveal certain sales information that a lot of companies don't, but this was back on way back in 2019, I know, so long ago, but on November 20th, he said, Death Stranding continues to be really front-loaded. The game dropped 80% in its second week in Japan. This is following a 70% weekly drop in week 2 in the UK, as well as my reporting of steep fall-offs in the US. It will be interesting to keep an eye on this, and we will see where things stabilize. And I don't believe he had any more follow-up tweets after that. Maybe he did, but the point is, we have somebody who clearly has the information here. At that point in time, they were letting everybody know that, like, it seems like Death Stranding got off to a really good start and then just fell off a cliff after that, which is kind of understandable because as this article goes on to talk about, apparently, you know, there was a lot of divisive opinions in the community, and anybody who's been following the channel for a little while now who heard what I had to say about Death Stranding and how there have been a few times where I've defended it. I've always said that the game really isn't for everyone, and I still obviously believe that. I did platinum the game, and I can still certainly sit by that, where the game is not for everybody. So it's understandable that maybe there was only a certain group of people that the game really appealed to once they saw the gameplay, and then most people just kind of avoided it. It is unfortunate to hear, though, that it really didn't perform that well. But some other interesting things that come out of this are apparently at some point during the game's development, it needed to be like rebooted. Apparently there was a lot of strife and disagreements. There were numerous disagreements, as it's put here, between Kojima Productions and Sony. And this is one of the reasons why once the game had to kind of be soft rebooted, you know, midway through development, they were thinking about maybe making it a PlayStation 5 game, but because of the issues that Sony and Kojima Productions were having, they were just like, no, we're not making it a PS5 game, we're just going to stick with it as a PS4 game. And it's also worth noting that apparently some other studios underneath Sony were not very happy with the budget that Sony allocated towards Death Stranding, which is very interesting. Definitely not good news there, because it's just a weird situation to imagine that other studios are like frustrated with Sony, like, why are you putting so much money into this game? Again, it's kind of understandable, because a game like Death Stranding, the biggest credit I've always given it is that it's something way different, and I give Sony and Kojima Productions a lot of credit for just going through with this. And, one of the biggest things I praised is that Sony seemingly was putting a AAA budget on this game, knowing that this is not going to have AAA appeal. Like, maybe on the surface it will, but once we saw the gameplay, it was very clear to me that, yeah, this is not for everybody. And so I guess, some studios within Sony, if this rumor is to be believed, were not very happy about that. But again, this is where the good news comes in. It says that to offset this, the source goes on to say that Sony is working out a deal with Konami to fund the development of a new Silent Hill game with Kojima Productions as the lead developer. The thought process here is that developing a lower-budget horror game based on a well-known and established franchise with Kojima's name attached to it should bring a good return on investment, as well as being a strong title for the PlayStation brand. So, it also goes on to say, oddly enough, the source also mentioned Kichiro Toyama, the Team Silent Hill, or End Team Silent Hill, who would be put to work on another project based on the Silent Hill franchise. So again, this is what we've been hearing, I believe also from the same source as well as other sources. This is apparently something that is currently going on behind the scenes, and we have to take it as a rumor because it's not confirmed yet. The deal could fall apart and nothing may end up happening, but this is probably the most fascinating thing to me about this whole situation, because it seems that Sony, while they may be upset and disappointed at how not well Death Stranding ended up selling, because clearly their expectations were higher, it seems like they want to continue to work with Kojima, but they're trying to strike up this deal that just sounds too good to be true, where they want to do a Silent Hill game, which that makes sense because Konami, they're not doing anything, and if Sony really does care about these IP, maybe there is some truth to what was said in a previous leak or rumor where maybe at one point Sony did try to buy these IP, but they couldn't, it didn't go through, and Konami's like, look, we don't want to sell them, but maybe we can work something out. Maybe that's what's happening right now. I think it would make a lot of sense for Sony, just on a PR level, to try to do something with Silent Hill after what happened with Silent Hills and the cancellation of it. However, where this gets really interesting, and where I think Sony's being incredibly smart, if they're able to pull this off, because we still don't know if there's any truth to this, which I believe there is, the fact that they're trying so hard to get Kojima involved with the development of a Silent Hill game is kind of genius, because if they can do this, it is pretty much a guarantee win, and this is why it makes total sense why Sony would want to pursue this in the first place. We know that the fallout between Kojima and Konami was absolutely massive, and with that in mind, we know that Konami has pretty much been silent, aside from what they did with Metal Gear Survive, which, if that was any indication of what Konami would end up doing with these franchises in the future, people would just rather not see anything at all. If Sony's able to get themselves involved and say, hey, we have an exclusive Silent Hill game coming to PS5, I think that would be good. However, I think there would still be a lot of backlash once we learn that Konami is involved somehow. However, if Sony is able to build a bridge between Konami and Kojima once again, and they can make the announcement alongside the PS5 or at some point in the not too distant future that, look, we have an exclusive Silent Hill game coming, and we're partnering with Konami, and it's being developed by Kojima Productions, instant win. While there will still be people who are still going to, say what they had to say about Konami, people will just be in utter shock at the fact that this is actually happening. I know I would be, and I think that it would be a great move. And again, I think this is the most fascinating thing, because it seems like Sony was confident that Kojima was going to be able to deliver with Death Stranding, and while I believe he did, I enjoyed the game. It's understandable that not everybody really felt the same way about it, and it seems that the sales really reflected that, where it's like this is for a pretty small group of people who are really into what Kojima's doing here. But now it makes sense that Sony's like, okay, we want to do something that can pretty much be a surefire success, and it can be a win-win all around. Like, that's the best thing about what I'm hearing here. If it ends up happening, it's a win-win-win situation. It's a win for Sony, it's a win for Kojima Productions, and obviously it's a win for Konami, because, you know, Konami, when they do things, they just seem to only know how to lose anymore. So hopefully this works out, but again, it is a rumor, so we do have to take it with a grain of salt. But I found this incredibly interesting, and I thought it was worth taking some time to talk about, to kind of follow up on everything we've been hearing about Sony wanting to buy the Metal Gear and Silent Hill IP, and we've just been continually hearing about this rumor of Sony wanting to do a horror game, and there's just more and more evidence emerging that this is in fact a real thing that's going on behind the scenes. But it's also very interesting to find out that apparently Death Stranding's development really didn't go that well, and Sony is not very happy with the way it sold, and so maybe that is the catalyst for why they're doing what they're doing now. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. Again, I wanted to kind of change the conversation up a little bit and just take some time to talk about this. I'm going to be really interested to see what you guys have to say, so make sure you leave your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Again, leave the video a like if you enjoyed it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.